To join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point, so come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears, and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And I do welcome you this evening, this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you are in this beautiful blue marble, skipping through the galaxy. Welcome. Galactic changes are all about us, and I mean around us. Visible spectral light changes where things are coming into frame that were invisible once before. So I'm right along here with Ransom Godwin tonight, 420 TV Freedomist Films. And
The changes are apparent. But now, what are the solutions to these problems that we're seeing pop up like spring mushrooms everywhere? You know, we all have a list of probably 10 things you could name in just casual conversation. But what are the solutions for those as we move forward into far lower crop yields than are anticipated are going to be coming in at the end of the year? Probably something like 20 to 25% under what all the predictions are from all these crop forecasting agencies to stabilize markets. How will people react? And what kind of measures will be there to control the people after they react? Oh, wait, sorry, they've already been put in place to control before they react. But it'll be a human thing. So how would you control access to food and make sure that still the producers of food were protected when unruly, hungry masses go amok? That kind of control. And then, you know, you see all these distractions around, and I'm quite now convinced the distraction is from what is soon to be a serious global food price crisis. Food unavailability. All culminating in people getting super angry. Distract, set up for control, and away we go. Now, Ransom, you sent me a PDF, and I really didn't want to talk about that because I don't know what the situation is with your broadcasting tonight live, because we're trying to do this on several venues to bring it to a wider audience, and Ransom usually streams this, so I'll give him the floor here. And we'll continue from there. But Ransom, thanks for joining me. And I know you were out at the, in Colorado. Tell us about that. I'm really excited to hear your firsthand story of what the people presenting true information about the state of the climate, where it's heading, and how our societies are going to be bent. And now I want to talk about the solutions to that. So Ransom, welcome.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, it was a pretty trippy event there. What I think the main weird thing about it was that I got to see a room of the, I guess you could call it dangerous people, right? So all of these people are considered deniers of the climate. So they had already some hit pieces out on them. When we were there, you could tell that it was a very science-based, freedom-based convention. The problem I had with it personally was that I realized, looking around the room while I was eating the dinner with them, is that everybody in the room are not going to be there in 5 years. I mean, not every single person, but the majority of the people there are on their way out. I mean, I don't want to be mean about that, but I was thinking, where are all the young people? Where are all the middle-aged people that are kind of fighting this top-down world government style thing? And there were some really good speakers, amazing people, lots of PhDs, academics, people in industry, all sitting in one room. And there was literally no press there other than Diamond going there to interview a few people. So it was just kind of back in a Vegas dark room with a bunch of old people that are catching on that there's things amiss and getting together. So I already saw the only news media that showed up was a couple of foreign media outlets, and they pretty much said, here's what deniers look like, and put hit piece out on them. Not unlike the Vice article that you got. Within a few days, there was a bunch of that. So really, to me, I thought it was scary because I didn't see that many people on the other spectrum of ideas. And the ones that were there were, I'm not trying to be mean, but they were in their golden years.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's what I found also in my research when I first started doing the Adapt 2030 channel at the end of 2014, reaching out to everybody for information. Yeah, they were just eking away at getting to their retirement. They were all at retirement age, but they just stayed on because the enjoyment of the work is not work for them. They enjoy what they do for the research to lead humanity in a different way and leave their legacy for the planet. That's not work. It's something different. So they work past 65. And that's what I started to find was people that I would reach out to, they grew up in a different world where you wrote letters and you phone called people to get a hold of them. because at that age, 65, 70, you've lived through all the eras, typewriters, handwriting, letters, being on a telephone that had, multiple homes on it, and you had to click through and maybe wait your time to turn or talk. All this transition that they've seen in their entire lifetimes, they're still old school. And to get in with them, being a guy from the outside and, showing something about these grand solar minimum cycles that I had found in a cycle record and mapped it across a bunch of cultures. But they were like, well, you're not a PhD and you're saying something about cycles and things. And, I want to stay outside. That's not what I find is they say it's not my genre of like niche. So it's like, okay, they might write you a nice email back, but I was really thankful for people who did take the time to respond, like John Casey, Robert Felix, these guys that helped. But it is predominantly an older crowd, because even look at Robert Felix. He was considered sort of one of the younger dudes in the crowd, but he was still in his 60s. I never was able to really reach out. The people you could reach out to were research assistants, but the not actual people that you're talking filled that room. Maybe there were gatekeepers in front of them at the universities or places. I reached out to Mark Morano a fair few times. We agreed to get an interview going. So was English bloke. It'll come to me. Dellingpole. Yeah, so we were trying to get on some interviews, but those are the kind of younger guys who I would consider younger guys, like James Dellingpole and Mark Morano, compared to somebody like Dr. Roy Spencer, or I don't know where's it going to go. Will that understanding of even what basic freedom was, is that going to end when their generation's over with? Is that it? The powers that be are just waiting for the next generation to end because it'll be forgotten after 3 generations.
Yeah, that would be the scary part. Fortunately, there's people in their 40s and 30s, and even from what I've been reading, Generation Z is kind of more patriot-minded, kind of similar to Generation X, and the way that they're trying to absorb old school, skills and philosophies, especially when it comes to individual freedom. My son is one of those people. He's a Generation Z, and the only thing that I'm kind of passing down to him is the ability to skip the universities and the system to be able to take care of himself. So first off, I'm learning along with him. So if I'm going to be learning, you might as well teach your children at the same time and show them all this stuff about plants, how to grow, what to grow. And he's getting to see it right along with me, like when we plant, and not that much food comes from that. And the realization that, if you were dependent on growing food yourself, you could starve to death if you didn't have a good year. And, what would you do for backups? And that's what, I think the majority of younger people that are caught on to some of these older guys that were there speaking and stuff, is to take from it that, unfortunately, the system outnumbers the few. So you're out there by yourself, basically, and you're going to have to form communities of like-minded people, and you're just going to have to go to the old waves. And right now, it's probably the last little window that I think people have to accumulate knowledge from boomers and anybody older than them even. And they hold the last little bit of traditional hand-me-down knowledge from teaching, other than going to a technical school. Almost everything that I've learned from someone else, doing things, working on stuff, helping people, etc. And then I moved into construction and learned a lot of the same stuff there. But that's not what they're offering anymore. That's not what young people have an opportunity to get. So if they don't have someone that's reality-based, fact-based, science-based in their approach to life to be a kind of a mentor, I guess, towards them, we're looking at a idiocracy for real, not the movie, but in real time. Like we're already seeing it. You have to admit that we're already a dumbed down population, and I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but it wouldn't have got this bad if that wasn't the case. So if you have knowledge, you need to pass it down with emphasis to anybody you can. If your children aren't listening, teach it to somebody else that's willing to absorb it. You know what I mean? And we all got to teach ourselves how to take care of ourselves, because things are looking pretty gloomy, from gas prices to food prices to shortages. It seems like the manufactured supply chain shutdown is coming our way, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's starting to show up from everything from household items. Like if you were waiting on that new washer and dryer, you saw the Secretary of State joking about that would be fine. But really think about that. Once we stop having things that work in our home, it's not really easy to replace that stuff. And if you can't just go down to a retail store and buy a washer or dryer or something like that, you're back to the old ways, going to the laundromat or hand washing that stuff. Life is about to change for a lot of people, and I don't think the general public is ready for that. Thank God there's little groups and communities that are trading information, kind of like we are. Every time we learn something, we can pass it on to the community and everybody saves time this way.
Yeah, and you think about how many people are not going to be ready. Or will they'll kind of fall into a few camps of, I can't deal with it, don't want to deal with it, so whatever, and I'm just going to live my life and go down with the Titanic, don't care. There's a few who get the information, but they just don't know what to do with it. They're kind of like a deer in the headlights. They're stuck. They don't know how to start. Should I start? What are some solutions and that sort of thing? And it falls into that camp. They feel it, but they don't know how to take action. Then the other ones who full on over freak out panic, which is too much. But then the ones who get into the zone, getting some land, starting to grow food, prepare food, prep out, this sort of thing. I mean, I didn't realize how far ahead people like yourself and mine are compared to the average person out there that's going to have to get in and start transitioning to this pioneering lifestyle. I mean, it takes a long time to grow a garden. It does. And all the blight this year from all the extra rain in Tennessee. Out in the West, it's drought. So, both places were affected. It was terrible growing the tomatoes this year. It's almost like you have to put a fan out there in the garden next to your tomatoes, wild space, because nature didn't blow enough air to keep the mold off your plants. I don't know, but I don't really think that many people are going to get prepared. And when this goes down, they're not going to be. So this is what brings me back to that one statement I was saying. How would you control the citizens if they get unruly and angry? Because governments understand exactly that breakdown and what's going to happen of people. So how would you control the populace? You can't do it right when the event happens that very straight number one day. You're going to pre-plan assets around in advance. Maybe you could use an event to pre-plan those assets 20 years in advance. But whatever's there, this mechanism to control the citizens with police force and militarized police force on top of that, what is now medical control. For now, I'm not talking anything jabbing. I'm just talking about the power that a single person has to say what everybody in America has to do with medicine. Just one person at the top. They make the decision. Everybody's got to do it. So, and then the lockdowns too, because I was just talking to a few people from Canada over the last 2 days. And they were saying it's impossible. You can't drive out of Canada. It's like an iron curtain going up on Canada again. And, you could talk in depth about what's required. They can fly into the States and then fly back. They need to be completely vaxxed, double checked, nose thing, everything. But they can't drive a car. They're like, it's an iron wall going up. So when you start to see these controls of movement of population, which was one fingerprint of the grand solar minimum I referenced a lot. Population migration is one of those things that happen with the collapsing and shifting economy. And then government change. So, where do we go from here should be the question. If everybody's not ready, and they're going to come for your thing, government's already put several layers deep to try to get ready for the control of the unruly and this madness when people can't afford food, can't get food. And how are you going to protect your stuff? The guy I was with, he's like, I got too much stuff. I can't protect it. So he had more acreage than I do. It's like, I got too much out there. I got the barn out there. I got this out there. So when it comes to it, how would you actually protect your stuff? I mean, you're going to have people with you. And I come to the realization that then who do you get out? Because most people aren't even listening. Oh, we're going into this thing at 100 miles an hour, no air brakes, no seat belts, straight into a concrete side of a mountain with rocket engines attached to the back of that. The generation that's purveying this true information about the climate is getting sidelined by all this $150 trillion of carbon credits coming into existence, or they're creating an asset class out of nothing. Carbon trading market. It's an existential threat. Well, don't put it in the atmosphere. Even one atom, 1 gram, 1 molecule, let's leave it at a molecule, of CO2. It's an existential threat. You can't put it in the atmosphere. It's changing runaway global warming. But I can register my forest and say I won't cut it for 20 years, and then I'll get a certain amount of money for each acre just because I left the trees up to absorb carbon. And those are carbon credits that then you will have to buy if you didn't have enough of those. That's silly, completely silly. But to usher in this new economy, cryptocurrency, this carbon trading market, basket of currencies, gold, as the fiat system collapses around it, they're going to have something ready to go. So it doesn't come to a complete halt, because that's not good for anybody. But there's all these mechanisms and platforms ready for the new world to start, already at your fingertips. If you're going to lose the fiat currency and the banking system and bonds for quite some time, you're going to have something else to replace all that. So this carbon trading market and non-usage tax as well. I saw some stuff in the UK. If you go and you buy an electric vehicle, you're going to get charged now a tax, road tax, every year, because you're not buying petrol, which there's a road tax included in the amount of petrol. So now you're being penalized for buying an electric car because you're not raising the taxes. You can't get the tax money. It's almost like if too many people buy electric cars, it's going to be free. We're not going to have money from fuel taxes. So they're just calling it a road tax. So anybody who's going to drive is going to have to pay a tax on the road. Any car's wheels touches the road, you pay a tax that year for the car ownership and being the car. How much extra money is that? That's another something comes out of nothing, just created. And yeah, I don't know what to say going through this thing. Everything's there to show you it's being transitioned from the control mechanisms to the new economic, let's say, platforms that would replace traditional banking, but would be faster because it's decentralized. It flies down the wires. You don't need the staff. You don't need the buildings. You don't need any of that anymore. You can remove that entire thing out, because if an insurance company has to pay for it to be rebuilt or restructured, that's going to bankrupt the insurance industry. But if you just let it go and, we're never going to come back to the banks, the buildings, whatever, it's going cryptocurrency now. We don't need the buildings any longer. Then think about the money saved on that too. So it's a financial implosion, something and then the people that are not ready, that's why I got all long-winded there, Ransom. The people aren't there that are going to be prepped out with you enough to probably hold off the hordes, unless the government can hold the hordes back in the cities and not let them cross any kind of lines when it gets real rough and they're out there pillaging. And you're getting a lot of reports of them stealing farm animals, getting into houses to get food and altercations with owners, that kind of stuff. If it gets to a point where that starts to make news, then, that comes down to that whole thing where my friend said, I can't protect. I got too much stuff. And Ransom, I'll leave it there. Did it make sense, or was I just babbling?
No, it made sense. And, I was thinking about this weird idea that you brought up about the CO2. I sent you that article that's titled, it's from phys.org, and the title of it is Climate, Removing CO2 from the Air is No Longer an Option. Like that we're so much of an emergency. So let's go ahead and get in trouble on this topic here. And I kind of want to bring the topic around in a weird sci-fi way so we won't get in trouble. As you know, lots of sci-fi movies that you watch on television have the premise or it's in the background of the plot that in the future humans have ruined the planet by global warming or severe climate change, whatever it is. So in those movies, a very common thing for you to see is spaceships using algae for oxygen, right? And when I was sitting here and we were watching this movie last night, and I saw this in the background, and then I saw this article right here. It's called "Injecting Algae into Suffocated Tadpoles Brings Their Brain Cells Back to Life by Injecting Oxygenated oxygen right in there using the power of photosynthesis kind of to oxygenate almost necrotic tissue." And it goes into how it not only does that, but it lengthens the tadpole's life in the water and outside of the water. And here I'm showing everybody a article from sciencealert.com. There's several out right now on this topic, but it gets into the fact that this algae injected intravenously into this tadpole extends the tadpole's life, not only the first part of its life, so in the water, but also as a frog outside of the water. Now, let me circle you back to the sci-fi movies that you always see in the background, is that humans are using algae in tanks to not only eat, so they're eating this gross, slime or whatever made from algae, but they're using it to produce oxygen in these massive spaceships that they always have. Now, I was sitting kind of as the cameraman in the background, listening to Diamond talk to one of the founders of Greenpeace. I think his name is Moore. He was one of the speakers at the event. But he was pointing out that, because we're in one of the lowest points of carbon dioxide in Earth's history, that, a long time ago, these little creatures in the ocean, these little kind of jellyfish type creatures started making shells, which started trapping huge amounts of carbon dioxide in the shell itself. Now, the shell falls down to the bottom of the ocean or whatever it is. Now, this has been happening for hundreds of millions of years, not counting the coral reefs and all of that. So all of this carbon dioxide is trapped, and it's not in the cycle anymore. And I was thinking, one thing you never see in these sci-fi movies is a tank full of shellfish that's absorbing all the carbon dioxide that they're breathing so that they could have clean air. They do show the algae portion, producing the oxygen, but they never put that in it. It made me wonder if the propaganda is so sophisticated that they didn't even want people out there to start thinking about the idea of the shellfish trapping carbon dioxide, like any kind of clams, what have you, that make shells, right? They wouldn't want to put that idea out there because maybe people might realize, if they started reading something else, that there's a big, giant scientific hoax going on right now, which leads you back to this article, removing CO2 from the air is no longer an option. So this kind of tells you where they're going with this, and the end result is some kind of fee, some kind of metered fee for you to be able to breathe. Now, they've already done it with food, land, water, et cetera, and like you were saying with the driving, wait till you have to get special insurance to drive your gasoline-powered vehicle down the road, because everybody's forced to drive these electric vehicles. And then that's so funny that you said that they would have to pay an extra fee because they're not driving a gasoline-powered vehicle. So you see that there's always a metered scam no matter what. And I'm pretty sure that the end result of the CO2 agenda, basically the entire agenda, is a way to supercharge everything that people do and meter as far as farming, growing, ranching, and straight up they found a way, like on Spaceballs, to like threaten you with air. It kind of makes you think they're just going to show up in a ship like on Spaceballs and vacuum all the air out of the atmosphere with the big vacuum cleaner, and we'd be forced to open little cans of fresh air to breathe.
Wow, you painted such a rosy picture. I'll be happy to bounce out of bed tomorrow at 6 a.m. based on what you just told me. Start the day early. Yeah. No, I could say something about the shellfish, though. That the amount of CO2 that a shellfish would sequester in an actual hard form, not a leaf, versus the forest sequestration. If you're talking on a per acre basis, imagine if shellfishing and protein fishing and creation was the new main number one business on the planet. Like you said, people understand, this new carbon credit trading market is going to be based around how much CO2 something pulls out of the air, and then they'll get an allotment or some type of value associated with that every year. And Okay, so plants doing something, because even the prices they already showed preliminarily were grass field 1 acre, you'll get $1 per year in perpetuity as a something for that, as a token of your land donation. And if you bump it up to shrubs, then you're getting about $7 or so. And if you're coming up to full forest like it is, current prices are around $25. But it has been as high as 100 and some, and they're predicting it going to around 500. So think about that, just in scale right here anyway. Forest itself, you have a full acre of forest, you're going to get, let's say, even around $20 a month for each acre. So if you have 20 acres, that's per year, my bad. And then, yeah, that's the carbon credit that's given there is on the amount of CO2 sequestered per acre per tree species. And what they'll use is LiDAR satellites to then penetrate through the tree canopy and identify each tree species. And then they can use an algorithm to determine exactly down to the tree how much you are pulling out. And that becomes its own value, because those carbon credits I said you're going to have to be able to buy things if you run out of it are those same ones that are issued from those same forests to whoever owns the forest. Now you can keep them yourself or, sell those to. But what is the amount of CO2? You got to think about a shell is way, way heavier than a leaf. Because see, the carbon they're talking about comes in the leaf cycle mainly for such a long time before the tree dies and decomposes. Think of the tree itself knocked over, and decomposing is the shell you referenced there. So you got something that's hard. One's way faster to grow than the other one. Like, how long does it take to grow a tree? 100 years before it's super massive, thick, and dense enough to count as a carbon offset by how many tons were, sequestered through the tree respiration, the tree spring, fall, leaf shedding, in the fall time. How big is that tree? How much does it weigh compared to shellfish on an acre basis? So I'm wondering what the weight of that would come out to for 1 acre of shellfish versus 1 acre of forest on, like I say, pure value of that. I'm going to look into that, Ransom.
Well, evidently, millions of years of shells, though, just on the bottom, not to mention, how much biological material on the land gets compacted, in soil and gets trapped that way. But the whole concept that something that we inherently need for plants to be able to eat, it's just the whole silliness of trying to turn you into the cause of everything. So, you have to get used to you being the blame for climate change. You have to be the blame for all of these things. It's your reason. It's your fault that for hundreds of millions of years, the CO2 has been dropping, and it's your fault that they are trying to convince you that it's still some kind of toxin. What are they really talking about? Why do they want to get rid of it so bad? Is it so that the earth itself is doing worse? I mean, think about in our history. Let's not talk about now because, evidently you can't. But in the Earth's history, when it's had lots of oxygen and lots of CO2, the Earth was very green. I mean, like so much resources, it's probably unimaginable to humans now because the forests are so much smaller and there's so much less species than some of those times. You imagine, is that what they're scared of, is actually the world and the people on it doing well? Like bumper crops, lots of new, resources coming out of the ground because of a natural CO2 cycle where we actually increase in CO2 for a while. Would that be such a bad thing? I mean, really, if you talk about the science. I wanted to bring up some other stuff, though. You brought up ivermectin a while back before it became kind of a thing that you would get in trouble about talking about. And I was kind of bringing up that I had an abscessed tooth, and the fact that I used some, as they would say on TV, fish medication. But it wasn't fish medication. It was actually the same thing they give to humans. But I digress. So this article in the DC is about a woman to become the first to contact an extremely rare bacterial disease from fish tank, journal finds. So, right away, I start thinking of the way that they demonize the other medication. And I wouldn't be surprised that if things like this start popping up, making people scared of the fish tank, and then reinforcing the idea that the answer to this scary disease is a fish medication called amoxicillin, which then will become demonized, and as you saw with the other medication, will be called animal medication. I can see this widening, this trend of everything that's useful to a human is going to become extremely rare to find and hard to get. And think about the idea now that if you have to get their medication to go into some kind of visit in the medical industry, and you need something done that's just regular stuff, you're going to have a big problem with this other cult of people that wants to force things on people. And you can't even resort to having a friend that is medically trained, like say you had a medic from the military to help you with something, or say you had a veterinarian help you with something, or even a doctor. All of those people would have major crimes put against them, like if they did something horrible for helping you out with the medical condition. And that just shows how they're further weakening the system, where they're shoring up all the loopholes where human beings can help themselves and be self-sufficient. Now, I also wanted to bring up this article with you from Yahoo News, which, by the way, has been removed from Apple at the behest of the Chinese government, but you can still find it on the internet, of course. But it talks about, it's actually a LA Times article, and it's an article about the effect of a major earthquake and what it would do to cell phone service, communications. And the study finds that basically Californians would be completely in the dark. Probably, if you've ever seen one of the other earthquakes there, like Candlestick or one of those, you saw that there were fires all over town. People were out of electricity. There wasn't water. No one was prepared, even though they lived in a major earthquake zone. And it would be the same thing today. But think about this on a bigger scale with some kind of EMP event, and it would be the same thing. Family couldn't call people. People would be totally lost without that little cell phone that they've been mind controlled to think has the answer to their life in it. So what do you think about that? Like, can you imagine just not even a grid down, but a smaller one like they're talking about, just an earthquake, a major earthquake, say a 8-point or 7-point something, an earthquake that just knocked out all the communications where people can't call each other. And then at the same time, we just so happen to be having, supply chain distributions. We so happen to have hundreds and hundreds of big freighters out there waiting to deliver their goods in California also. What's going on? Why are they actually holding all of that out there? Is it just so that they could flood the market at a particular time and be the hero? Or do you think that they just want to get everyone used to not being able to get goods and services and get used to kind of a shutdown government, kind of like they've been doing worldwide?
Yeah, I believe it's to prepare the mind for less, in whatever form less takes for people. Have you noticed there's been a lessness happening across? Less jobs, less energy. And when I say less, I mean some of that will result in higher prices of other things, but less travel, less free time. I couldn't say less stress because it's exponential, incredible amounts of stress. And it's just less of comfort and choices and availability. And if that's what they're getting the mind program for, because of this grand solar minimum crop loss fiasco that's beginning now, began last year, intensifying now, should have chosen the word correctly, then governments realize the same thing you did, Ransom. Like, there's very few people are prepared. And then the people who have the information to lead us into this next world with solid data and sound minds and real science, they're going to be gone during this event because it'll last for about 10 years. So when you come out the backside of the grand solar minimum, there's going to be an enormous amount of population decline, just not enough food to be grown. There'll be changes in the economy, so vast. So you got to think about, if you know that's the direction it's going, then what would you do to prepare the populace? Because you can't yank everything out from under them in one fell swoop, because they've done an enormous amount of studies on taking away too much too quickly causes a backlash, which they don't want. So it's been a slow drip feed for a couple years by using fear. But, you know, I'd love to get a hold of that earthquake video or the earthquake story with the cell towers, because another thing that comes to thought right away, beyond the antibiotics, like fish moxie, I think is what he's referring to. And there's also fish doxy, which is doxycycline. And then they have fish psyllin, which is fish penicillin, if you're into aquariums and if you're into fish farming. Erythromycin can also be put into the water because a lot of the fish, their fins are rubbing together. It's a skin problem for fish. It's used on skin. So there's an enormous amount of different thing for staph infections, microbial infections, respiratory infections, all in the fish kingdom. It's just distributed through water, but it has the same exact effect. So you're going to put it into a solution in the water, and the fish swim through it, and then it's no different than, you know, something prescribed from a doctor of similar effect would work in your body. But, you know, since it's for aquariums and fish farming, it's distributed in a different way. And, you know, if you don't have comms, and there are earthquakes and they don't have comms, who has just a weather radio in your truck? Simple hand cranked radio, AM, FM, and then the weather, National Weather Service constant channel with a kind of a light on it and, you know, a long battery life. Well, in addition to what you could crank to keep it charged. I mean, that's a very basic thing just to have to even know what went on, what happened. Then think about communicating. Does anybody have a CB in their truck or in their car? Because I'm going back old school. CB and Citizens Band radio, the truckers still use it. Everybody's communicating on the highways. You're not listening to what's going on literally on the roads of the planet's delivery system. You can tune into it with a CB and hear guys talking all day long about this, that, and the other that are driving the trucks, because it's predominantly men, probably 99%. So if you do get into a conundrum, communications, medicine, and then you're going to have to come up with some kind of money. You know, I watched so many analysis from people who understand money on what will happen during a crash like this. The money, our paper money, will be good for about a month after a major crash or some event just like the Great Depression, but worse. It'll be honored for a little while until people realize that it's not going to be worth anything. So if you have the extra physical cash when the ATMs stop working, could you at that point pay cash, have a couple hands full of silver or whatever to get yourself to a place where there might be communication? I don't know. Travelers have been paying their way with silver and gold coins and tradables for 12,000 years. Why would it change today? So to even have something that would offer you the chance to have a tradable to get you to a safe destination. A guide, if you will. So there's so many things that you have to look at, so many facets. It gets incredibly deep in this disinformation going on to try to push everybody away from finding these facts. And that was so interesting, Ransom, here, that they're demonizing fish tanks to push people away from finding that connection. I'm going to do a full vid just to bring it into the light. Like, why don't I do that? I should. Kind of a Wild Westy dude. I'll bring it.
Yeah, and not to mention that, it's like also scaring people off of having, you know, possibly maintaining a food source in your home. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't have to just grow fish that look good. You could actually grow things you can eat. I remember a while back there was that story of the guy that got arrested because he had a bunch of sharks or something in his basement, and I kept thinking the whole time, why doesn't he have food down there? Like, I know sharks are cool and all that, but wouldn't you rather have like, some salmon or something growing down there that you could actually eat?
Well, it brings you back to the algae again. You know, algae, spirulina, and algae, how many bags of that do you use? And the Corella algae. That's superfoods. They squeeze it into little pills and call it a superfood pill and charge you like $30 a bottle. How much of that can you grow in a tank in a week? About probably 50 bottles worth, you know? but it's going to be liquidy, like Ransom said in the beginning of the show. It'd be kind of slimy, and it is. And then there's oils in there, essential oils that you can use. And if you have that and you don't have any motor fuel and you can scale it up and you have a sound wave, you can put a sound wave in the water and crack the algae open, and the oil separates and the green matter falls to the bottom, which you could use for animal fodder. But that oil that's at the top up there, you can skim that off and then turn it into biofuel. The thing is, you know why you always drive by a pond in the summer and you see algae floating on the water surface? It's because all the oil that's in the algae is taking it at the top like an oil slick, but in a plant form. Algae is the way to go. And fun fact about algae, if you add it into a biogas digester, it increases the production of the methane. So I think it's 15% addition of algae into a regular biogas digester using whatever it is, cattle dung or something. But the output is 50% more. By using that as an adjuvant inside that process, it kicks out because there's already oil in it. And see, that adds to everything in the cooking and the mix. Many solutions. What do you think food is? Salmon? Yeah. How long would it take me to? And here's the thing. Like if you're a group of people marauding a house and you come in and there's tanks full of salmon, you know you're going after that. That's the first thing. You're like, maybe I'll even take a bath. I'll swim in here because I haven't had a shower for a month. When it comes to that point, they're going to be stealing your salmon. Plus, they're going to want to use your fish tank to take a bath in. That's no good. But if you had tanks of algae, they would walk right by them. They wouldn't even know that was food. Not to mention a superfood with all the micronutrients and vitamins that will keep you alive. And some say, in the biblical references of taking a day of rest, they had some sort of algae machine that worked for 6 days. They took the day of rest, and it could be stories, or it could really mean that they were growing something for a 6-day period and needed to clean, and then that was the day of rest. So something, and you talked about manna, and you referenced manna before. Again, it's a substance that has enough life in it itself to keep you alive. And marauders would walk right by your super green. They'd probably avoid him. Ooh, that fish tank's so out grubby. Oh, get away from that fish tank. Don't want to get sick. But it's full of all fresh grown algae, and they would just think it's a slimy fish tank and walk away from it. You can disguise your food. Disguise the food.
Absolutely. I'm kind of counting on that. I've been growing a lot of wild edibles here, and most people that see it think it's weeds. They just don't know what it is. They don't know why I'm growing it. It just looks like, the lamb's quarter out there kind of looks like tumbleweeds at this point. The same thing. So like no one would even know that that's food. And I have Australian sea bush out there and some other things that are just growing that they may not be that tasty. However, it's hundreds of pounds of accessible food when no one else knows that it's there. And, like if you're growing all kinds of tanks of algae, they may want to know why, why are you growing that? But as far as taking it for food, they wouldn't know that. You're right about that. I doubt people would even know what to do with microgreens if they found a bunch of jars, like with alfalfa growing in it or something. Most of the people that are unprepared, they just really have never seen any things, and they're really ignorant to what a lot of things are. But let me tell you, people that are hungry and people that are on the strife are fast learners.
Too bad they're learning the wrong skills. How quickly? No, that's a very valid point. Like, how quickly could a society transition everything, including what food was? Growing hemp for the protein out of that instead of wheat or corn. Getting into the superfoods. Pomegranate's a superfood as well, and Moringa oleifera, and algae, the chlorella and spirulina. Could you retool? So that's mainly what we grew to put into our diet, so we had natural defenses against everything. Start at that base level and then see where it takes, because your mind will react differently too. It'll be way cleaner. It'll think faster. And then start putting some different real clean fats in there, like duck fat, different types of oils, maybe like almond oils, whatever. It's something to really get the brain cognition fired off too. And then we start our days, and that's how we, and then, how would you, retool society, because you sent me that crazy robot that's now has something mounted on it, and that was a retooling as well. It came out as that super friendly Spot yellow robot from Boston Dynamics, and now it's something out of the Terminator movie. I mean, that's a retooling as well. But really, how quickly do you think we could retool our world with all these new skills people would have to learn?
It's really funny that when I first saw these robots, and I know I said that, I even told you about it. We were talking about kind of, the joke about me buying one to do that. And then somebody did it with a paintball gun. So I figure the military industrial complex just said, why not? And there it is. Just like I said, they mounted a big gun on that thing. Here, let me show it to the audience here. But not only that.
What were the paintball results there?
Well, it worked perfectly. The company, Boston Dynamics, tried to, shun it and act like, we would never use our equipment for something so nefarious. But in actuality, that's what all of these robots were always designed for. All of this stuff comes out of the DARPA world, the military industrial complex. And there it is. You can see it right there. It's called the Ghost Robotics and Sword International. They teamed up to create this rifle-toting robot dog. It's called the Special Purpose Unmanned Rifle, otherwise known as SPUR. All right, and it has a 6.5 millimeter Creedmoor rifle with sword, with a sword. How about that? So this thing is a quadruped unmanned ground vehicle that will blow you away from a long ways away. And if you've maybe some of you have watched the Netflix show called Squid Game, and basically in there, one of the first games that they play is showing that they have this super sensitive AI that recognizes everybody's face and their movement down to a couple millimeters. And when they fail the game, they get shot to death by this robot. But I wanted to show you another thing in the real world that they're already using. I sent you a Twitter link too, and I'll put that up for everybody. And this is basically the Spot robot dog that I was predicting you could attach a rifle to in the first place. And it says Hawaii has introduced a $150,000 robot dog, which that's kind of a lie because the robot dog retails from Boston Dynamics for $75,000. But anyway, maybe they got all the bells and whistles. And this dog is it's supposed to walk around the public and scan people for COVID in public places. So first, the little robot scanner comes out that checks your social media. Your social credit score, which is also what that PDF I sent you is about. It's about the patent for a social credit tracking system for COVID and other things. So we can get into that at another time and let you read through it. I was showing them. But here you see this robot dog here is going out. So first this thing will go out and scan your face and who you are, check for warrants, check who you are. You like all of that stuff. But it'll also do a medical evaluation. Now, say you don't cooperate with this robot dog that tells you to stop and put your mask on and wait for authorities. Well, they may be in the near future sending out this other robot dog to back it up. And this one, is a little more intimidating, but we're at the point in the future where we're about to see a large scale war, because I know for a fact that China and the United States have been practicing with these robots in somewhat of a little proxy war games in Africa. Then that's been happening for the last couple of years. And then you have places like we talked about last time. China has a completely big underwater AI city with giant fish and God knows what else kind of war technology they have that's AI driven. So I think we're about to see that in the next kinetic war that people don't believe we're going to see. But I actually think that it would be in the best interest of not only the UN NATO group or the Anglo-Saxon Empire, whatever you want to call it, or the Chinese. And when they go to war, they have a lot of resources and old equipment that they would probably love to get rid of, so that we can start the new world order with all new toys.
Yeah, you made me laugh when you said it's a slight bit scarier than the other one. Yeah, it has a bear trap for a mouth on it, like a biting dog would, but it's a bear trap that snaps on you so you can't move and run away. that's a little bit more scary. You know what I mean? And the range on that, I read a little more into some of the optics on it, and the range on that thing you talked about sticking on top of the dog is accurate to 1,200 yards. Now you got to think about that as just a guy who would go to a range sometimes. If you're pinging something at 400 yards pretty accurately, you're like, yeah, okay, good range. But then when you take it out to 500-600, it's way difficult. You know, you gotta be using some kind of bracing to get at that accuracy. But that little dog thing is running around by itself that accurate all the time. So imagine people that wanted to stop that, you couldn't even barely get close to it. That thing would snag you off like halfway before you even got to it. 1,200 yards. Imagine if it bangs you at 600. You couldn't even get that close at 600 to really be a threat to that thing. Then, I mean, well, how do you say no? Because you know, as you were telling that bit of information, I envisioned the story of that dog coming up and sticking the thing out in an eye retinal scanner, and then a lot of people saying no, and then as soon as they turn around, the dog would start chasing after them. Now, I envisioned that when you were saying that. Will it be like that? Yeah, what was that movie where the Elysium, you know, where they threw the thing? Yeah. Elysium would be a good indication. So anybody wants to see the future, Idiocracy and Elysium.
Mixed with the little Minority Report. See, I know all about the military drones. See, they work in tandem as a whole force. And actually, China has been really bragging about their abilities with making swarm drone formations. So each one of those can have a little explosive. But if you think about these dogs just set up around the town or wherever it's at, and they're just patrolling around, kind of keeping the public in line, so to speak. They also have air support that's flying around. And some of these drones that they have created never come down, or they don't come down in months. They're just sitting up there at high altitude. And then you combine this with things like the Argus program, which is a early 90s program that was a Predator drone that basically had 10,000 cameras on the bottom of it, and it looped around for hours and hours, taking a real-time, high-definition overlay of like I think it was a couple kilometer area. And so they were demonstrating it with Quantico, Virginia, and how they could keep track of every single human and car in motion or not in motion. And that was in the early 90s, which actually led me to realize that they were putting these up over lots of cities, and they're using them all over the world, and they have been for quite some time. So if that program started in the early 90s and you've seen the advancement of satellites, drone technology, and et cetera, you know we're way in the future.
And we'll be right back with the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm David Devine, right along here with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films. Quick break, 2 minutes, 2 seconds. We'll continue on our conversation as we return for the second hour. See you then.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6 verse 4, and there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us. Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. But time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And good evening. Welcome back for the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations right here on this beautiful blue marble. Be thankful for the blessings that you have. It's almost like we're going to spend the summer in the FEMA camp as we move forward to 2022. Walmart's going to be rolling out a bunch of Bitcoin ATMs. You knew that was planned. Mass adoption for cryptos here for the new world as we step into the grand solar minimum. Crop losses and economies collapse. You won't use fiat paper currency anymore. We're going to move right over to digital currencies, crypto. And thank you, Revolution Radio, for allowing me to say such things. So many platforms across the planet are banning everything we can talk about, myself included. YouTube, I mean, how many things got Vice News writing articles about me because I talk about the sun driving our climate on our planet, and a major news publication comes out and tries to discredit me because I talk about the sun. I mean, imagine what kind of person that would be back, 800 years ago in the Aztec kingdom. A journalist demonizing people who worship the sun? Like, really? So I'm glad I can talk about it. Thank you so much. And if you consider free speech an option or something, shouldn't even be. There's no option. It always is. That it continues that it is. consider a donation right here at freedomslips.com. The Revolution Radio Studio A and B both for the production cost, running costs to keep all these shows on air. Now, with that said, I really do get pushback when I talk about the sun's effects on our planet, and I'm starting to see a much wider picture now. And the sun is affecting things, and you can definitely see it through history and the cycles. So now it's starting to repeat, and I'm realizing governments are taking action not only in preparing for themselves, and that would explain a lot of things like container shortages. A couple of years ago, all these different shortages of things while the government was buying all production for a 2 or 3 week run. We want it all now. Forget everybody else. They're not going to piecemeal it out. It's already set for delivery and that bulk buy. So governments are getting ready. They've been stockpiling, but at the same time, we're going to need to control the people. And saying anything like this is absolutely toxic for any narratives to bust through it. And it's like, wait, a lot of these dots are connecting now, like a lot, almost all of them. So you knew that cryptocurrency adoption was going to have to come. And they tried it a sliver with Facebook and that Libra coin. The whole thing with BitConnect back in the day got everybody scared to go into crypto. And now it's back again with lending platforms, and banks want to come out with their own central bank cryptocurrencies in opposition to the ones you can buy now that are out there in the wild. But you knew at some point the mass adoption was going to come with cryptocurrency. And once it does, it's going to run like a scalded dog northward. And from this point forward, you will never get a Bitcoin for under $30,000 to $40,000. It's gone now. Walmart rolling out Bitcoin ATMs to start 200 stores nationwide. That's across the globe. This is just the United States stores here. They're partnering with CoinMe, which is something I'm similar. It's an exchange to get into actually a purchase, but their rates are ridiculous. Like you got to pay 14, 15% commission on that. It should be 0.25% for those of you who never bought crypto before. To pay even 10% at a Walmart ATM, it's flabbergasting that you should be paying 0.25%. So look at the overage on that. They're like, all right, we can charge all these newbies who don't know anything about that. We'll whack them with 15%. Like, how many people will buy Bitcoin in an ATM out of Walmart store? Like, a lot of people go to those stores. Like, it's a staple for millions and millions and millions of people across the U.S. Like Bitcoin ATMs. This is it. So we're about a year away from the economy going down because they need to get the mass adoption before the system can switch. In addition to the carbon credits, in addition to the new basket of currencies, I mean, it's maybe not a special drawing right from the SDR or from the Central World Bank, but it could be a combination of currencies plus gold. Like, things are being set in place everywhere across everything. But Ransom, what do you think about these Bitcoin ATMs in Walmarts now? It's definitely moved into overdrive now. You on mute? Or maybe I lost Ransom there. I will get back and we'll see what happens. But as I try to see about the connection here, think about that for a minute. You knew things would have to come. The systems would need to be replaced.
How about now?
All right. What do you think about that? The ATMs and the adoption of crypto happening now? Because you sent me that article. What happens if the world's key metal exchanges, London Bullion Metal Exchange, LBMA, and then the COMEX here in the U.S., or even the CME here that's out of Chicago? What happens if they don't have the metals? Yeah, we're moving into somewhere. They're going to have to go to crypto because if there's no metal to back the fiat, then the game will collapse in 1/5 of an 1/8 of a second. They already need a replacement, and now it starts. Here's the replacement for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a replacement, and I'm kind of glad you brought up the crypto because you were talking about connecting dots. I saw this article by, let's see, who was it? Nathan Crooks by Bloomberg, and it was talking about Peter Thiel saying that, you know, he underinvested in Bitcoin and he was slamming the central banks, and which, you know, I was reading that, and I'm not all of that savvy on the cryptocurrency market. However, I'm not sure if I sent you this article, but I wanted to show everyone this article. It says Silicon Valley entrepreneur Sam Altman wants to scan your eyes in exchange for free crypto. Now, it sounds kind of nice, you know, get your eyes scanned, and it shows this neat little device that they're trying to use. But if you think about where we're going, I wanted to connect some of those dots. We were kind of talking about the robot dogs, and I was showing the little, robot that's checking to see if you have COVID there, which would report back to the system, which kind of connects to this whole system that they're making. And I sent you that PDF, and what that PDF really is talking about is a social credit score that's been filed, patented. It's a United States patent, and it's talking about exactly that: receiving information about a subject, analyzing their information, generating a score, and allocating them where they're going to fit into this, score group. Now, you link all of this stuff, and this eye scanning device that they're talking about, he wants to give you free crypto, but if you can see in the future, we were talking about that, and I wanted to say Minority Report, because in there they have the little robots, and everywhere you go, just like in reality, a lot of the stores are scanning your retina to know that you came into their store. And it was in that movie the same way. Now, this billionaire wants to also, do the same thing to you. Now, what happens in the future when the only way that you can get or access your cryptocurrency is through their social credit score system that controls everything? And then they would have to scan your eye. But think about these multi-tech billionaires that already have a copy of your retinal scan. They already have your unlocking information. It's a way for these, top of the top people to kind of get around all of the things that we have to do to protect our money. So these people could clear out, all kinds of people's crypto. And then you have bankers, and other people that are just straight up saying that they miss the window on the cryptocurrency, because everybody's, kind of in one mindset around the world now that the dollar is going to disappear. Any kind of paper money that you have, and you were talking about that earlier, what if the system went down? Would your paper money be worth anything that you could get out of an ATM or maybe you had on hand? I doubt that, because the markets would be cinched up to access to the internet and being able to do this controlled system of internet commerce. So, and in the same way, this blocks out all of these moms and pops peoples that are all going out of business right now, and all of these people that are having their businesses, homes, etc., repossessed. Like Barack Obama said a few years ago, we were going to see the biggest transformation of wealth ever, and I'm seeing it right now, right before your very eyes. All around the world, they're taking up all of the resources, property, and trying to take the money. So we're inflating stuff, making those paper monies worthless right now. But at the same time, cryptocurrency is getting a foothold. I myself am benefiting right now from cryptocurrencies that have been going up lately. I don't know about you, but I even bought me some more, a new kind, that Shiba Inu that they offered. I got some of that, and everything that I've kind of invested in, it's not a super growth, but I see it day to day gaining wealth, and I'm watching the dollar doing the exact opposite. And then they're, putting rumors around about food, about not being able to get gifts for Christmas. So they're really pushing it out there that the old system is coming to a collapse. And then you count on top of this, what everybody won't say, the big elephant in the room, is that we've had a communist takeover. And why would the communists want a capitalist society ran on dollar bills in the first place? Well, they don't. So it's in their interest to collapse the entire system we have here to finish redistributing the wealth. And then, the scary times ahead about think about any country that's ever gone the communist way. Food shortages are shortly after that, and bad times, and shortage on heating oil, and all of the other horrible things that people have experienced in communist countries that used to be capitalist free countries. So we're seeing this as a worldwide move by the governments to lock up every loophole in the human domain so that you have no choice but to go through their system. And think about the people that are ahead of the game in the crypto game. You are going to see new wealth appear, and there are probably going to be some people mad about that they didn't get into the beginning of it, like a lot of people have. And even right now, is still what I think it's still the beginning of the cryptocurrency era, because I think all money is going to go digital, because everything is going digital, from your identification to all of your information that has anything to do with your life, from your health to your health records. And that's the scary utopia that we are in. It's not in the future. It's right now. It's just that they're implementing it now, and people are finally starting to see the bars on their cage, which, we've, as Americans, kind of have been, complacent and took the freedoms and the ability to gain wealth for granted in this country. And even myself, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I had no idea when I was young what I should be doing as far as this kind of thing, gathering wealth, land and resources, and looking to the future. It kind of helps you live in the now. If you not noticed that ever since you started kind of planning for the future, that the right now resources have been better. Like, there's always stuff on hand, and you can every time you get a benefit from saving things and getting to use them, you realize how that really helps you out. So like right now, I'm trying to look into the future because I have 2 children, and I don't want them to be without because I sat around just crying about the system collapsing around me. So like you said, we have to start implementing these solutions. And part of that is trying to, unfortunately, gain wealth while other people are losing it because they just don't realize that that's happening.
Yeah, and anybody out there listening about the crypto, Ransom just hit on an incredibly important part right there. The wealth that's going to be generated by this cryptocurrency, the way a lot of people look at it right now is your Bitcoin's worth, what, $65,000? That's $65,000 of today's money. And when we go through this reset, everything's going to be reset 10 to 1 or 100 to 1. But not Bitcoin. It's going to pop out the other side, revalued to something else at its current state of the new money after the revaluation. So say you had $1,000 and they revalued 10 to 1, you'd only end up with $100 new. So the amount of wealth going to be extracted in a transfer like that is going to be so gargantuan. It'll be as if the kings in the 1400s pillaged the planet again. But all the cryptocurrency, even the Shiba Inu and Solana, which is a proof of time concept, which is going to rival anything Ethereum, I would predict Solana going to $4,000 or $5,000 in the next few years easily in today's system. Not the revalued when we come out the other side, the fiat collapse and the revaluation of fiat. Crypto prices will stay exactly the same. So things that you bought for pennies now are going to be actual new hundreds or tens of dollars in the new money itself, but you're already reset into the new money. So you already have that new wealth and that new value already, boom, right in there. So what you paid for a penny is now worth $10. And we'll have a couple 100,000 of those or 1 million of them because they were only a tenth of a cent or something. And suddenly they're revalued at that rate, but you're in the new world with a new rate pushed against those in the new currency, whatever form that takes. So you're carrying through a Bitcoin of 65,000. I know they want to go to parity to $10 million for one Bitcoin at 1 Satoshi for $1. But now I'm starting to think, is that before or after the reset money? Because right now you might think 10 million, oh, okay, that's a super a lot. But what if it's not? What if the 10 million is, as I was heard? See, it didn't make sense to me in the beginning because they were talking about central banks using a Bitcoin as a settlement overnight between them on the blockchain. And I was thinking, well, those things back then were even $20,000. Let's say 50,000. I mean, how many Bitcoins would a central bank need to hold to like trade amongst each other like that? It's kind of even unfeasible right now. If you were going to think at it in today's money terms. Perhaps it's meant to go to parity of 10 million to 1 after the reset in the new money system of new value pegging, where that 10 million might be actually 1 billion. And that's what the price of the Bitcoin would be equal to in the new money compared to today's reset money. Because if it resets 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, I'm wondering what this crypto value is going to be, even things that are a tenth of a penny in the new world once we emerge out the other side. This is going to be the new money. This is the new money. This is the new value that gives birth to a new economic system based on at least something to have value, like the carbon credits and the cryptocurrency and other things as we come out of this crash that hasn't been seen since the Roman Empire. Like this much damage and wealth transfer in a 2,000-year event across the planet is in motion as we speak. So what happens when we terminate and come out the backside on this thing around 2030? What's the new money going to be? And you know the reset's going to happen long before 2030. I would predict myself just to say, 2024 at the very latest. Because with the food shortages coming in and the growing season shrinking and the yields coming out globally, and everybody is trying to cover with the agricultural agencies already talking about planting for next year. Before the harvest even come in, now they're trying to deflect into next year to raise or lower prices based on possible planting next year. This is what they forecast. Again, it comes back to like one guy in a medical thing in the United States pushes all policy in the States, and you got one USDA, and whatever they say pushes all the entire grain markets across the planet. That's got to stop. And anything about this reset coming in, and again, one thing, cryptocurrencies, Ransom, you were talking about the retinal scan. Yeah, that's if you're going to come in the new world into the new cryptocurrency on their device that you finally caught up. But if you have your Trezor wallet and you have your Ledger wallet, you're still going to be able to access it without ever having to give a retinal print ever or a fingerprint, because you already bought those devices prior to the implementation. Now they're going to let banks hold on to your crypto. So what kind of things? Your bank's going to require fingerprints at the minimum for that. Signature, fingerprint, ID, everything. Just like you have a traditional banking, but it'll be probably another step for fingerprinting. So where does that take us? Revaluation in the new world, these prices are so incredibly cheap. If you think about what they're going to be used for in the new world, the prices now are so unbelievably low. This is all penny stocks or pennies turning into hundreds of dollars on what if you have several cryptocurrencies to back yourself up? You got a few Ethereum, you got a couple of Bitcoin, you got some Solana, you got a whole bunch of the other ones too, from Algorand, Digibyte, Stellar Lumens, and then you like bringing that to the next world. God, even if you only have a few $1,000s of that stuff, it's going to make you a wealthy person in the new world and the new usage of this. And I don't know when this will be plugged directly into the new economy to create the new economy, but that's what it's going to be used for. Once the new economy is created, this will be your new money. Not today's rate either. Like I say, it's going to the resets 10 to 1, 100 to 1, or 1,000 to 1. I think that covered everything, Ransom. Private keys. You need private keys because all the central bank digital currency they're going to give you as your wages, or I don't know, what do you call it? Stipend checks, or there's other words for that. Universal basic income. Yeah, you're going to have to do the retinal scan thing to have a wallet. But what if you don't even need the universal basic income because you made so much you just made vast wealth off of having cryptocurrencies now? It transfers over. You never need the fingerprints. You don't need the retinal scan. You got the thing on a private wallet, hard wallet, and then you're outside the system as such. Just thinking ahead, man. Just thinking ahead.
Yeah, well, that's totally what this thing is to not only bait new people in, but imagine all of the other devices that use a retinal scan to unlock stuff. So the idea that a billionaire wants to give you free cryptocurrency, and what it is it's Sam Altman's WorldCoin is the crypto that they're giving out for free. And he says that he's already amassed over 100,000 users globally and aims to hit 1 billion user milestone by 2023. And you notice these dates that everybody's setting it by. It's like there's a clock that they have to get everything done by around 2025. I mean, from the governments, like I always bring this up, but the Project for a New American Century, most of their goals in 1998 or whenever it was that they first took on this think tank paper and started using it, from that time to now, they set almost all of those goals for 2024 or 2025. So you know that the world has a deadline that they're about to switch things dramatically. And they've done this incremental system over so much time that people are going to be in shock when they no longer do it incrementally. And actually, that's what we've been seeing in the year of 2020. But think about this 1 billion people's retinal information. And if you look at this little device, it's a creepy looking little alien eyeball thing. And it just scans your eyeball. But that's exactly what its idea is to get people free cryptocurrency and start them a wallet that's based on their retinal scan. And I'm sure in the future it'll be easy for those customers to buy other cryptocurrency using their retinal scan and the wallet set up by this company. But, it's like the world has forgotten about the idea of privacy from, like you remember the revelations of Edward Snowden, to the point now people just don't care anymore that the government or corporations or anybody has every bit of metadata on you. I was looking at my Google map history the other day, and I could tell by looking at my own map history that if I was anyone with a little intelligence, that I could, predict not only where I went, but what I was going to buy, when I was going to eat, all the places I traveled. And that's just a basic glimpse into what they know about you now. And a lot of people think they're being very private, but wait till this social credit score that they already have patented in the government takes effect. And then you'll find out that there is really limited to no privacy left in this world.
The timeline. And see, that's what the whole thing goes into as well. It's almost like they need to know where every single person is on the planet. Because if we come to this grand solar minimum, catastrophe, drop in food production, things are going to fracture regionally. And self-sufficiency will become the name of the day. Well, it's almost like they're tagging cattle and they want to know where everybody is. Is that to help? To enslave? Because this timeline, 2025, matches exactly with the grand solar minimum apex point of September 2024. It's September 30th. Second magnetic field in the outer solar system, locking in on the sun's magnetic field. So between now and 2024 and September, October, that era, something vast is going to happen in the climate where you're going to witness changes that you can't even explain beginning this year coming in the first quarter of this next year. And a second significant point is when Jupiter swings back and we actually lock into the second magnetic field all the way through 2024, that happens September of 2022. You are going to start to see things, feel things, and understand things that made no sense before. And when you see things glowing in the sky, like what would look like elves jumping across the sky, the electrical frequency is going to start changing more even. I mean, a lot more. People are going to see it to the point where they're never going to they're not, like they can keep this whole IPCC global tax thing going the way it is now, right? Getting the kids in the schools to support it, and then just outweighting the old people so they perish and they forget to, and the kids are brought up again, this way. The time clock is ticking fast. The two upticks, Q1 2022 and September 2022. Population is going to wake up at that point. They're going to understand a couple of things about the crypto that they've lost out on getting the money as their money crashes. At the same time, the food's going to start to happen. And then you're going to have an out-of-control populace across the planet that needs to be controlled. Because it's not going to be hunger in the beginning. It's going to be anger. and some hunger. But then it's going to turn to hunger first and then anger. You know, that's when it's going to need to be controlled, because it at least didn't give anybody enough time to prepare for everything. So that timeline matches with that. Now, that's going into it where they're going to need much more control in food distribution. Who gets it? The good citizens, yeah, whatever. They're going to decide who starves and who eats, perhaps, by 2024. But coming out of that at the end, at 2025, who's going to be left? That is the question. Because these events before have wiped out at least 25% of the global population. Add more now because nobody knows how to do anything. There's no skills. But 2025, then who's left at that point? And then we're at the beginning of the new era. And you hit it on the head. Why is there that rush to 2025? It's almost like they need to get everything done to start an entirely new system, like press the start key on it, whoosh, and it goes live, 2025. They have to do away with the old system this time, and that you're right, that the whole supply chain thing seems fictitiously planned. The collapse, not a complete meltdown, but enough to shake a lot of things out and then start a new system. Same timelines, same food shortage timelines are the same timelines you're talking about 2025 for all this track, trace, retinal scanning, understanding where every human is on the planet, mapping everything with LiDAR to know what plant species are everywhere, and then lock it all down, and then see who's left at 2025. Something like that is going on right in front of your eyes right now. And I'm going to stop there.
Well, that's cool, because I thought, for the next half hour, I wanted to hear your thoughts on, I'm not sure if I sent you, I'm going to send you it right now, but one of the articles talking about let's see here, let me make sure that I don't sound silly, the quantum phase transition that was detected on a global scale deep inside the Earth. It's a paper from October of 2021, and it talks about that they can tell, that way down in the Earth's core, the lower mantle, that there's a quantum phase transitioning happening. And this comes out also at the same time as another paper here, and I'm going to send this one right to you right now, that talks about the Earth may be surrounded by a giant magnetic tunnel. Does that sound familiar to you? So I knew that these two subjects, you might have a little something to talk about here. So we have evidence that the Earth is going through a phase or a change right now, deep down, and we're about to have some lively stuff happening in the Earth here. And I sent you, I think those are the last two I sent you there. No,
you have the one. I would love the magnetic. I can explain it and go deep into the magnetic circling that you're talking about. That's easily explained with magnetic field lines becoming more highly charged on the current outbound flow to show you exactly where they're terminating in the ionosphere.
Yeah, well, think about that. It's kind of that the scientific community is finally coming around to other ideas now. To tell someone that believes in the electric universe that there's a big, Z-pinch magnetic tunnel around our solar system is old news. That there's one of these on probably each planet and each sun and black holes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that they haven't been pushing out there, and it starts getting into the sun actually driving our climate on the planet, if that's too far. But also, so I sent you both of those papers. So this is this paper right here talks about some deep Earth changes that are happening, and this possibly, I thought, could be related to what you talk about happening in 2024, where there's a completely different magnetic field pulling on the Earth right now during this new cycle that we're doing here. So this is something that we may see the effects of within just 2 years now, right?
Yeah, you'll begin to see the effects next year. And that's the thing. The panic across the planet is going to start to set in once they start to understand these events and see them with their own eyes. So the first thing I got at there is they're trying to explain what a Birkeland current is in a different way, that it's the whole Earth wrapped in a magnetic rope. So it's a plasma field aligned current, a Birkeland current in space. So you have twisting positive, negative in a magnetic field. But if it's in the tunnel, It means it's inside the current flow of whatever that is. A tunnel around is a different way to say it's completely enveloped in that electromagnetic field that it's in the middle of. So something is charging the planet higher or something lower. If the voltage increases, the voltage decreases. And hey, it would have an effect on our sun too. If it steps down, the sun would go into very low activity for several decades. But at the same time, our clouds are going to move around more. There's no magnetic field really to lock them in place. And the Earth has to this is the one thing I wanted to get at mostly. Earth is going to have to discharge, because you think for the last 400 years, the Earth and the sun have matched charge exactly and balanced for 400 years. And now the sun is in a rapid step-down state, and the Earth is going to need to catch up and discharge the extra electric captured within the crust. Now, that's different than what you're talking about in the plasma core. We're talking about the crust. And that is where the current runs through using mineral deposits. I mean, current travels through the crust. It doesn't go through rock. Rock is composed of different minerals in veins, in field. And you have the charge that's inbound or outbound. And where it's outbound is where the discharge of electricity is, because inbound coming is the plasma from the solar winds and that sort of thing coming off the northern lights that would trigger that. That's an inbound flow. But the outbound, what is that really? That's lightning connected to a center of cloud layer. And then we're starting to see sprites above that. And now a lot of red sprites. They look like things off the canyon walls in Chaco Canyon above the thunderheads, 30 miles up. And then we're starting to see these blasting holes up at the ionosphere. And here's the interesting thing. The reason I'm telling this connection here is they're called elves, E-L-V-E-S, electric elves. They blast a hole in the ionosphere. That's what we're told. But what in actuality, the same thing. The magnetic field lines are becoming so intensely charged that you can see where the wrapping magnetic field line is. The donut is the same thing that paper described, where the Earth is in a tunnel. What you're looking at after an ELF is seen is the magnetic field line. Oh, it's in a tunnel coming out past the 100-mile mark above the atmosphere, reconnecting back to the sun. So I encourage everybody to look at electric elves, because when you see that halo donut is surrounding a magnetic field line on the outside of it. So you can see where it's encapsulated. It's almost like being in insulation in the sky. Think of the red halo around as red insulation wire. And on the inside is where you're looking at something where the current would come out of, following a magnetic field line. It's very defined. That's why they always they understood that it was a little circular tube that was a magnetic field. And these elves define clearly where magnetic fields are. So now they're trying to say, these scientists, that the Earth's wrapped in a tunnel of electromagnetism. That's no different than showing where the electrified magnetic field lines are at. But see, then they're trying to explain it. They're going to have to change tune. There's no way they can continue with this global warming. It's going to shift. It's going to drop out too fast coming in 22. There's going to be no way. Even you're like most conservative parents that you've ever known in your whole life, of friends or family or whatever. The most conservative one, they're going to start questioning everything about this whole climate narrative. How much change is coming? It's going to shake the core of the foundation. And at some point, there's going to be a rollover, and they'll be like, nah, it's not CO2. It's got to be something else. So they're going to have to come clean. And hear how many articles are coming out talking about, electricity, the sun, this thing. Yeah, they're coming clean. They're drip feeding. But I love the article about the Earth being wrapped in a magnetic field and a field-aligned current. So they just admitted Birkeland currents drive the climate on the planet, but the solar system too. That's crazy. That's a great article to find. That's a good find.
Yeah, I sent you this other article I was kind of showing everybody while you were talking about the
Blue Luminous event. Yeah, that is a discharge from the Thunderhead as a blue jet reaching up to the upper ionosphere in that magnetic current sheath and then attaching to a field line coming off the sun.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome picture that they got. And they get into talking about the elves right there, so I was kind of showing it. So this is like a brighter version of an elf. The elves are the red ones, right? The little bit dimmer than this.
Sprites, the red sprites, those are the ones that look all glowy. The elves, ELVES, those are the donut-shaped circular ones that are high up. They're actually at the termination point 100 miles above the atmosphere. And when they get tripped off electrically from what you're showing of this blue luminous event, that current coming off the top of the cloud layer there would be running up a field line, and when it connects to the ionosphere, it doesn't blow a hole in it, so it didn't disturb the atmosphere. It made plasma glow around it to very define where the magnetic field line is, so it's wrapping around. It's not a hole blown in the ionosphere. It's turning on power up there so you can see the luminous red glow surrounding the magnetic field line, and that electricity discharging from a planet's going up and getting back out, equalizing with the sun.
Right, that's pretty cool stuff. We're going to see a lot more of this stuff, and kind of why I sent you the thing about the the inside of the Earth having a quantum phase transition is because it kind of shows you how that they're finally about to start telling people. And I saw another article the other day that was talking about, are we going to have to experience, how many more CMEs with the sun going into a new cycle? And it's just like, finally they're saying stuff to people, but it's timed at a time when no one really is reading it. Like, so only people that are fascinated by this stuff kind of read it. Everybody else is missing these piled under, thousands of headlines about stimulus checks and COVID and all of this other stuff. So nobody's even paying attention to this. And I think what's going to happen if people start seeing these kind of events in the sky, and we've talked about it before, they're going to start losing their minds. And I like how they named this thing a luminous, where was it? Transient luminous event, like it's just some homeless guy wandering around the sky.
Got a drip feed it, so that's a pretty picture. Nobody's going to read the quantum phase transition graphic image of the depth of the crust in some graph. Nobody's going to click that as a YouTube thumbnail, but they'll click that little blue luminous thing. What's a blue luminous thing? Is it a UFO? What is it? But the soft is closing. The electrical effects that are now starting to affect crop growing regions. And then once they have to acknowledge that, then what's next? It's not going to take too long. Like you were talking about that fish article. They're putting demonization of aquariums out to get sick, skin something. If you own an aquarium, they're going to drive people to demonize aquariums. And I lost my thought where I was going with that. But, oh yeah. Ransom, I lost my thought with that.
I think they did that thing on you. You got elfed with a low frequency right there. He was about to make a point.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, the fish. The thing, the reason that they did the fish is to drive you away from understanding that. But the same thing, the electromagnetic effects, they don't want you to put that together. Of these discharges are happening, but they have to soft drip in that it's an electrical phenomenon that's going to change the atmosphere, etc. But what they don't really want you to get, in my opinion, is the elves above that, wherever you trace down to the ground, these events are going to start destroying crops everywhere, getting incredible low yield. And now China just today had stopped all exports of fertilizer. It's mainly going to hit India and Southeast Asian nations. Pakistan, one of their largest partners for fertilizer. But then it's this downward spiral. How long is it going to take to connect the idea of, wait a second, something electrical is charging higher velocity and bigger storms, bigger hail? When did they put two and two together and go, wait a second, crops are probably going to get wiped out? Same thing, the fish. Once they figure out the fish, it can be used for other things. they're trying to push you away from it, because once the realization comes about the electrical effects destroying crops and those things being related in the Earth's global electric circuit, oh man, there's going to be a lot of angry people out there. That was my thought. I found it. Thanks for helping.
No, I was actually thinking when you were talking about that, the electricity. I've been watching different things on this. Now, there's this big rock up in New England that's like a megalithic rock, and it's kind of, I forgot the name of it, but anyway, it's pivoting on 3 smaller rocks. And for a long time, the native tribes would take their seeds there, and supposedly they would get energized, right, or charged a certain way, and then they would take them back to their crops and have a bigger yield, bigger plants, etc. But when you said that, it kind of made me think about crop circles. And I'm not saying crop circles are real or not real. However, whatever caused them, and a lot of the people that studied them, they say that that the plants were not destroyed and they were kind of bent over and they had a charge to them. Do you think that it's possible that they had, in the ancient past, they had a way of knowing how to charge their seeds because of these kinds of problems? Like, say there is a magnetic resonance, like there's no magnetic field, and it starts affecting life, because we know plants and animals both are affected by magnetic fields. So you think about if your plants are not charged right and none of them are doing well, these people knew that they could take these rocks to not rocks, but the seeds to like these big charged granite rocks, and it did something to the seeds. So you think it's possible that we may have to learn ancient knowledge again, more in a scientific way this time, like how do you charge your plants to do that on purpose, maybe using technology we have today. I haven't heard much about that science. I have heard how people talk about, and I know you've touched on this on your channel, with these star forts and the shape and the resonance it puts off in the water. And you kind of add those two ideas. It's like that may be why that these farmers from the ancient past, the oligarchs and, the ancient people that have been in control, these elite families that have always they know about all of that stuff. And that's kind of why they hide it in these shapes and stuff. So you imagine that we would have to relearn this ancient stuff just to make our crop grow at all. Like instead of having these little bitty feeble plants, figuring out how to actually charge the seeds up. That was kind of more of a ramble, but a question also.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. So for any dairy people out there or grain providers, if you're going forward on your contracts, you're still going to have to provide that grain. So think about using frequency and vibration to hit those seeds to get a higher yield. Because moving forward, there's going to be problems with yield remaining the same. And a lot of areas are just going to go offline and not be able to, you're not going to grow anything there pretty much, except local gardens, on monocrop scale, where they would plant harvest by a certain season and jack that stuff with potash to make sure it came out. No, it's not going to be viable. The grow season will be too short. There'll be an enormous amount of extremes between that. So there have to be a solution to increase crop yields. Because moving grow zones is going to be a difficult thing too. Yeah. Can you move something from Canada down to central Kansas? With the same plants that grow in Canada, grow in Kansas? Probably not. Way too hot. So now you're talking about like switching species and zones. Now you're getting a Rubik's Cube together of what to fit where in what new space. What if you could increase the crop yield where it was right now in place by using frequency? I know a couple farmers. Perhaps I should ask them to plant that. What are these old traditions that we do or have been taught to forget and also been disappeared from our history? Tartaria is quite the good one. Nikola Tesla is another rabbit hole to delve down into, along with Marconi, wireless radio inventor. He and Tesla worked together quite a bit. So he had the frequency side of it, and Tesla had the other workings of the magnetic electromagnetic side of it. So those two created an enormous amount of stuff. Is it that we have to dust off a bunch of patents that were written back in the early 1900s that have been withheld from humanity to keep us on fossil fuels we need to burn? Or maybe it was so nefarious that this is a 100-year plan that they knew. But you'd have to be an elite that has survived this cycle many, many, many times before to put these plans 100 years in advance. Because the Tesla patents have been around since the early 1910s. Now, was it the plan all along to withhold that anti-gravity technology, parent magnetic motors, frequency, what you're talking about, charging seeds for higher yields, and imagine what you could do with water as well. Water would be a super water. Okay, withholding all that medical tech, if you will, right frequencies, there's all kind of things, orgonite. Push that all to the side. And then let everybody run up on the fossil fuels and everything. And then at the end, you knew that would terminate 100 years later. And then bring in the new system. But I mean, it begs the question, has the elite 50 years or 100 years advanced technology of what we have now? Because the story goes, talking about these little robots from Boston Dynamics, those are 50 years old. What they're showing you in public is 50 years behind the real tech. So what if it was 100? That would make sense on this whole burn the whole fossil fuel, we'll bring out crypto, we'll bring out solar panels and thing, because it would be 100 years ahead. So what if somebody had 100-year advanced technology and they could bend government, create the central banking and all that within the 100-year space and remove those life-giving technologies to control? Will it come back in the new reset here? Is the question. Because those guys up at Findhorn also, they sing to the plants, and they did quite a few other things with vibration into the plants. They touched them a lot, human interaction on the plant, literally petted the plants. They danced with the plants. They played the music. They had all these things, and they were getting what was considered scrubby clay land, the most gigantic yields ever. Nobody could explain it. Again, it's a frequency into the plant. The same way if you charge a seed, and I've seen some crazy things, reviewed research from ag bureaus and ag workshops and sort of thing. They would charge the seeds with an electrical current, and then they would get a completely weird, different plant. Like something that would have an extra head or an extra 2 ears of corn on it. Like old species would suddenly just pop out. Because apparently some of these older species had way more ears of corn on it than we do today. It's almost like it's been hybrid lower through the millennia. Because apparently there were like 10, 12 ears of corn on a single stalk. That's about half of what it is now. So I'm wondering where the disconnect was for this complete global control system. Can we bring it back with the vibration and frequency and the yield, crop yield increases? And Ransom, thanks for bringing that up. I talked to a couple dairy and grain guys the last few days, and man, they're all really concerned about the yields and the needs of the food for the dairy industry moving forward with these grand solar minimum crop losses. Can we bring it back with frequency in the seeds? Curious.
Yes, it really makes me wonder, do I have to charge my seeds, go outside and dig a star-shaped trench to fill the water in? And, all of these old things that they were doing in the ancient world and just kind of combine them all. Whatever it is, we're about to have to really learn how to do something, because not to be the bringer of bad news, but I've been kind of showing on screen, everyone, this article that says that the iconic Target store on Mission Street in San Francisco is going to close because of a tidal wave of shoplifting. And this is a fad that's been happening across California. Now, we've talked about supply chain distribution problems. We've talked about food shortages, etc. But what about whenever so many of the people in the masses steal so much that the retail stores can't even stay open, or if they do stay open, they're under armed guard, and they have to have a social credit score to make sure that good trendy people that follow rules, regulations, mandates, and laws are the only people that are allowed to come in. And another thing that strikes me while I'm looking at this picture of this Target store is in the store, they really didn't have any real food anyway. As you can see, well, maybe you're not looking at it, but anybody looking at this picture can see that all the shelves are stocked with GMO poisonous garbage. Lots, sugar, dyes, all of that stuff. That's all at the store. But even that stuff is going to be hard to get when you can't even go to the store because either someone burnt it down or they stole so much stuff from it that they had to close it in your area, which is going to shift all the businesses to the last little neighborhoods that have money, which you can see all of the problems in this design. Then
well, Noah, let me stop you, Ransom. Let me stop you for a second. All stores need to stop, and all business needs to cease on the face-to-face, mom and pop, and actually brick and mortar, because that transition you talked about, the retinal scan, will only work if you can purchase everything only online. So everything that we're seeing the deconstruction of it right now, so it's going to move to entirely zero brick and mortar human contact stores. Everything will be online. That's the only way it can enforce the social credit score and the retinal scan, because people will be running to the physical locations. They'll probably have armed guards on the trucks delivering to your house, but it's all got to implode. There can be no more stores open for what we're discussing tonight to even work in this next phase of the governance system. Random final thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly kind of the way I was saying. And you just imagine you're going to have to run out and retinal scan the Domino's delivery guy just to get your rations. If you're
yes, you pinged it, right? Exactly. You got it. That's where it's going. That's the total control mechanism. That's the only way they can control the collapse is keeping humans away from the distribution point that can be overrun. Yeah, that's where it's going to. So what needs to disappear to implement that system?
Well, farming is the only answer, isn't it?
So grow your pumpkins today, harvest up your pumpkins. It is Halloween after all.
That's right. And I think they're going to give us a scary shutdown this Christmas holiday. Don't be scared. They're just playing with it right now. But it is a good sign that you better get everything together because it's a fad of the future that we're going to be dealing with.
Yeah, there's been a lot of distant early warnings out there, right? And like, how many more warnings can you get that things aren't right? Okay, that's the 16th article we saw about supply chain breakdown. No, it's the 100th article now. But no, it's going to go back. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to deal with it today. Why don't I deal with it tomorrow? No, it's going to go back to normal. They said so. They said it was going back to the supply chains will be back functioning completely 100% just as soon as the backlog's done. I believe them. That's a lot of people think like that, and I'm looking at it going, wait, it's the 200th article now that I've seen about supply chain breakdown. Maybe I should get a little something ready, but a lot of people aren't, and that's what's so scary. And the flagging message in front, they still can't see it. Ransom, I don't know where it's going, but if you can't see it by now, there's so many that don't. I'm shocked. Personal opinion, though. Personal opinion.
It's over. Yeah, David Dubine.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Mini Ice Age Conversations. David Dubine, Ransom Godwin signing off. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Lottie-dottie. We like to party. We don't even cause trouble and we don't bother nobody.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
What the heck is the Truth Jihad? Hey, I'm Kevin Barrett, host of Truth Jihad.
We don't need no jihads. Anyway, what's going on here? Where's my camera actually right here? Here it is. Here it is. Get rid of that shit. No more Dubai. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming. Y'all come back here. I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'll be back on with some stuff, and I got all kinds of stuff on SD cards and everywhere, and I'm trying to get it all together before we head to Mexico to cover the Day of the Dead in Mexico City. Now, that's going to be a 420 TV trip. It's going to be cool. Peace out. Peace out, dude. Yeah.
You have questions about...
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Everyone I know goes away in